6 months ago, I made a video and said, when COVID money is going to dry up for all these school districts, it's going to be a huge problem and we're going to see teacher layoffs. But a lot of you guys thought that that was super funny and did not agree. And I think one person even wrote about me on Reddit and actually thought it was funny and sent me the article and said, I did this and nobody agrees, even on Reddit. But I can't find it anymore. But this is true. They're going to see in Santa Ana, they're going to see a lot of layoffs. Now, why is that? So I pulled up the article, and when I read it, I was like, it's coming to fruition, right? And here we go. The Santa Ana School District has a huge deficit with spending. So they're about 180 million spending deficit. And so they're going to have to cut costs and they're going to lay teachers off because that's the easiest thing to do. And now, before I even continue, they're unionized. And for all of you guys that say, oh, unions, and this and that, and unions, and keep going on and saying unions, if there's no money, the union can't save you. The union cannot print money out of thin air. And so if you're going to scream in the comment section that they got to be unionized, most of these people are unionized. But if there's no money, what's the union going to do? They can't make it more profitable or do something else, right? So what you got to do is, and I see this so many times, where people think like, hey, I'm in California, I'm spending all this money, and it's getting deployed on the wrong places. You guys are paying, and I used to be in California, and I used to get so upset with how California spends their money. And so I got some crazy stuff that they're spending money on, because I feel like saving money on teachers is the worst thing that you can ever save money on. I feel like if you save money on education, on food for kids, that is the worst spot you can save money on, because it just stalls their growth. I think teachers in preschool and middle school and high school should get paid a lot of money because it's so crucial to the next generation, right? So here we go. And let's see where California spends some crazy amounts of money on. So Legal Defend Fund Against Federal Policies. In November 2024, Gavin Newsom proposed a $25 million legal fund for challenging Donald Trump administration. Okay, here we go. Down payments assistance for undocumented immigrants. In California, in August of 2024, the California legislature passed an Assembly Bill 1840 allowing undocumented immigrants to access up to $150,000 in taxpayer fund for down payment assistance for home purchases. This is from the New York Post, so you can just type that in from the New York Post. Pandemic unemployment fraud. During COVID 2019, the pandemic, there was an estimated $11.4 billion in unemployment benefits to ineligible claim holders. Then they're talking about the high-speed rail, that went out of budget and is a disgrace. Then the tiny homeless project that they're spending on $40 million on. Then, then there's so many more crazy projects that they're funding. And if you're living in that state, it's just absolutely crazy. And here we go. I got some more for you. So, prison inmate arts program. Millions of dollars are allocated annual to fund art programs in California prisons, including classes in pottery, theaters, and incarcerated individuals. Then needle exchange program. Then chakra healing for school staff. Subsidized solar panels for millionaires. Guaranteed income for artists. Pilot programs in cities like San Francisco, Los Angeles provide monthly stipends to selected artists. Controversial reparation studies. California allocated $5 million to study the develop proposal for reparation for African American descendant of slave. So you see all this crazy stuff going on that they're trying to pay. And when you're looking at it, it's like, what do I want? If you're a family, what do I want? I want a good education. That's why I'm paying you all this money for. Because I'm definitely not paying you for the good roads in California, because those roads aren't worth driving for. So it might as well be dirt roads. And it's just an absolute disgrace when you see 350 teachers are going to be let go. And now you're like, well, this is California, they're mismanaged. And I'm going to say to you, hold on, hold on. It is not just California, it's also Colorado. So let's look at what Colorado says. After hopes of progress, some Colorado school districts fear deep cuts on their governor's policies budget proposal, facing $1 billion budget deficit, right? So we're seeing that it's more and more that all these school districts and these states, and I have a chart right here with deficits, and I'm absolutely devastated with seeing all these states that are running these huge, huge deficits, because at one point you cannot go into more debt because you're not taking that money in. And when you're a person and not a government entity like me, and you take out a credit card, right? And all of a sudden you can't pay it back, and you take out new loans, you refinance it, and at one point you're gonna pay interest on the interest, right? And you can do that with compound interest, where you invest it and your money's gonna make you even more money. But it also works the other way, where the debt is gonna start accumulating and just piling up. And all of a sudden you're not making any money towards it, and you're starting to just paying money towards the interest and nothing towards the principal, and it's keep going up and up and up, right? And this is going to be really, really bad for a lot of people, because if you're in a public school district, you want new school benches, you want better food, you want better utensils, you want better, just anything. All of a sudden they say, we can't do it, we just don't have it in the budget. And that's going to mean that people are going to quit, people aren't going to want to become school teachers anymore, and then there's less people to qualify, so you're going to have a worse health education, and then you got to go to private and so on and so forth, right? And when I'm looking at all these places like California, and I'm like, hey, during COVID-19, this is my story. During COVID-19, they shut my small business down, and I was a participating member of society. I've had 6 employees. I had a frozen yogurt that I just got. I was given high school students an opportunity to start their career off, gain customer service experience, gain all these experiences while I'm paying them, right? And so then they said non-essential businesses are down. They closed us down. And I was like, okay, this is why it comes in really handy to live in the state of California, because it's a blue state. And I was thinking that, hey, I'm going to get some COVID relief money that they're going to forgive, or just something. And because I've paid into the system, I did everything the correct way. And when we applied, nothing. Denied. Absolutely denied. Nothing, nada, niente. Nothing. And I was stuck with the bills. And so that just showed me that, hey, they fund the stuff that they want to fund, and everything else is just not worth it. And so I got left empty-handed while I was paying in. So that told me that I cannot continue doing this forever. And so what I did was, at one point I was like, you know what, I'm fed up. I don't agree with the policies. I don't agree how they spend my money. They're taxing the hell out of me. So I picked up and I left. And I know people now are so polarized that they just vote blue no matter who, or they vote red, and just, that's it, right? And I always say to people when they're talking about like politics or anything, I say, you need to have a competitive state. You need to have elections fair, and have elections done by people, not just because they have an R or a D in front of their name. You should see what they stand for, and then you should get them out. Because when I looked at this guy on TikTok, he's like a representative, and he had like a few 100,000 followers on TikTok, and then all of a sudden he voted for the ban of TikTok that he was a part of, that what kind of brought them all up. And I'm always saying these politicians have no spines. And then people, when you go into the comment section, they forget so easily that they voted against their own interests, right? They voted against the people that they represent, their own interests, for their interests, right? And so that is just a huge, huge dilemma when you're looking at, hey, I'm in a school district, I'm voting for this, and if there's no fair election, it's just like, hey, we just vote one party, and it doesn't have to be just the blue one, it can be the red one too. Then all of a sudden you're seeing like, hey, this isn't competitive, and this isn't sustainable. And now we're gonna see that a whole bunch of places are gonna have similar situations. So now you're like, well, in California, let's just let them go through it. But that doesn't mean that other states like Colorado aren't gonna follow. So we're gonna see a lot of these places are gonna get really hurt. And I made that video like 6 months ago, and I said once that COVID money's gonna dry up, it's gonna be really, really difficult because they gotta come up with new ways of funding it. And how do you fund schools? You increase taxes. So what do? You take it from these people that do work. And these people that don't work are gonna cost even more because everything else rises. So you're taxing the living hell out of these people that are still working. And there's some people, super high income earners that make $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a year, that they don't really care, right? But it's the people that are making 120, 80, 60, 70, 100 and plus thousand to 200,000. Those are the people that are going to get really, really hurt, because those are the people that live more paycheck to paycheck and are going to feel the pinch. And so I'm always like, this is not a win for anybody when these states go into these crazy downward spirals where they just fund these crazy things like, hey, we're going to fund a study to save the frogs. And then you hear in California that they had a law that a lawyer, I saw this online, and I don't know what kind of bill that was, but they said you had to prove that the car was locked on every 4 doors in order to make sure that the burglar that robbed the car or broke into the car, you can prosecute him. And I was like, what does that even matter? You have him on video breaking in the car. He broke in the car. Let's arrest him and put him in jail. And they were like, no, we got to prove that that the 4 doors were locked. That has nothing to do with anything. It's not even remotely relevant to what we're trying to do, right? And so you're seeing how tax dollars are just being wasted, tossed out with the bucket, with the dumpster truck. Actually, just put the tax dollars in a huge bin and just light it on fire. You'd have more from it than just going and creating these crazy new laws, right? And so, man, these teachers are gonna have one hell of a time, because once it starts to roll and they got to do layoffs, they got to do more layoffs, it's not going to be pretty. So what does that happen? Well, the union that collected the dues either need to increase dues or they got to do layoffs too, because there's less teachers, right? And the union doesn't need to be that big. And for all these union people that always say, oh, union's the only way to go, is, yeah, if you're working for a company that makes a shit ton of money, yeah, union's great. But if you're working for the state or something, the money's dried up, there's nothing the union can do. There's no silver bullet that can say, hey, let's redo something, let's revive it, let's make it, because they're not selling a product, right? They can't increase the subscription from $19 a month to $22 a month and be like, okay, we're up and we're profitable again. No. And so now, all of a sudden, it's just not looking good. And I'm always for these people that say, I just can't, and then they leave and then they vote the same way. So you got to really think about how you vote and what you want your state to look like. Because when I'm looking at these teachers, and I don't have kids, so I'm like, could go either way. But when I'm looking at the future of the next generation, they need to have a good education. They just do. I'm looking at the world around me and everything, and they just have good technology. They got iPads. They're really working on their next generation to set them up to success. And so if you don't have the money to fund this because you're spending it stupidly on other random stuff, all of a sudden you're basically voting against your own children and voting for saving some random artist so he can live and create art. But your kid that's going to get to the next generation and trying to maybe become the president or represent the United States isn't going to do well because you cheaped out on schools. And I'm talking about the common folks. If you're very wealthy and you can send them to private school, you're fine, right? You can do, your kid will be fine. But for most people that are going to send them to public school, it's detrimental. And you gotta reflect on it and say, is this how I want to continue? Is this how I want to continue living, or do we got to change and say, you know what, we got to start changing it? But these topics are so hard to talk to most people about, because then they're just not going to listen. They don't want to listen. They say, oh, the other party's even worse. But you got to change something, right? Because once the ball has started to roll, it's really hard to stop it. And when you look at the chart, how much debt all these states are in, it is really, really not good. When these states just run these huge, huge deficits, at one point it's going to happen to what Detroit happened to after all the collapse of the car industry, right? Where it's just was the motor city, and all of a sudden it was like dead for years, and they faced huge, huge problems with all kinds of uncertainty. They had to sell parking meters to Saudi Arabia so they can monitor it, and toll roads to kind of get the city back up. And now it's just not good. It's really, really not good. And so I'm just hoping that once people kind of wake up and see, hey, this isn't going the right way, because as we're approaching 2025 and the job market's still tough, then we will see how people are going to be like reacting to, hey, unemployment isn't really paying for anything, and then they're throwing money out all over and you're not getting any. That's like, this isn't going so great as I wanted it to. So yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And I bet you those people that are like, oh, I don't have the money, or I don't have this, instead of spending it wisely and allocating money like in a way of using it as a tool, they're like, I'll DoorDash something for dinner, it's $100, rather than just, hey, let me spend that $100 on something that actually will make me money, or will actually further my career, or spend it on a program, on a or LinkedIn Premium or something where you can connect with people, further your career. And yeah, let me know what you guys think about all this stuff, because man, 350 teachers and all these other states are close behind. Man, it's brutal. If you're wealthy and you can send them to private school, this video is not for you. But for the rest, man, this is absolutely crazy. I just can't. I just can't think that all these people that put their faith into these public schools are gonna get in trouble and gonna get their ass handed to them, because they can't stay the funding, they can't do it, so they're gonna let teachers go, and that means the quality of education is gonna go down. So yeah, absolutely bananas, absolutely crazy. So please, if you haven't, like and subscribe to this video, I would appreciate that, and I'll see you in the next